Chapter 92, Student Council President Election 5. The most important virtue for a magician is always to maintain rationality. Magic and magical power are not always as precise as mathematical formulas. One must always be careful not to expend more magical power than necessary or to utilize power at a level too high. There is no point in attempting magic far beyond one's capabilities, as it is not even feasible to mimic. However, practicing magic slightly above one's level is always dangerous. Because the flow of magical power within interacts with it, the power is actually consumed. Therefore, recognizing one's clear limitations and avoiding overexerting magical power is crucial. Especially those who must be exceptionally careful are the spirit summoners. The amount of magical power consumed through spirits is overwhelmingly more than other types of magic, though spirit resonance, as a support spell, does increase magical efficiency. That is why a well-trained summoner must never lose their rationality. One should clearly acknowledge their magical level and objectively decide which spirits they can handle. Yenneker Feylover was well aware of that fact. However, knowing it and practicing it are completely separate matters. What is that? The scale of the magic circle that bloomed in the night sky seemed familiar. Yenneker Feylover, who could even freely control high-tier spirits, would only be able to summon one type of spirits if she lost her rationality completely. They are the highest-tier spirits recognized for their formidable strength among the few high-tier spirits. For each element, there exists only one such supreme spirit. For Yenneker, who had even summoned the right arm of the highest-tier dark spirit Glaskin, calling upon a highest-tier spirit wasn't impossible. In fact, after a year of training, she had ascended to a higher realm. The domain of the highest-tier spirits was merely a dangerous area to reach out to for her, not an unreachable field. The summoning circle that soared in the rainy sky ironically represented the opposite element of water. It was the summoning ritual of the highest-tier fire spirit, Theophis, reputed to have burned down the entire Apoth Mountains in the mythological age. The figure of the dragon that spewed flames that scorched the earth and swung a tail larger than the royal palace itself was a grandiose scene recorded in history books. Glaskin sealed an entire academic building with just one arm. Likewise, the summoning of even a limb of Theophis would undoubtedly engulf at least the northern forest in flames. Yet, such a future did not enter the enraged Yenneker's mind. Anger directed her gaze solely towards the murderer before her. SSSSHHHH. Wah! On the rainy cliff, as Nox watched helplessly the great magic circle that filled the sky, he could do nothing but stare. Being in a completely incapacitated state, there was no need for the ritual to summon the highest-tier spirit against him. But rage paralyzes rationality. The sorrow of losing a loved one completely takes away one's reason. The pain that tears flesh and pierces the heart is equitable to all. Do you realize what you've done? Heat gushed from the sun-like summoning circle, starting to envelop the open air over the sea in steam. Although hard to believe, the heat rising from the circle evaporated all the rain before it even touched the ground. The steam rose like fog, shrouding the coastline and pushing the furious girl's expression into darkness. Now Nox truly sensed the approaching death. A murderous intent different from when Ed Rothtailor approached. The likelihood of losing his life to a single rage-driven strike seemed inevitable. That much was the girl's overwhelming spirit, beyond his ability to bear. Just as Nox was about to accept his impending death. Wah! A gust of wind blew away all the mist in the area. Blocking Nox's path with a swooshing sound stood a massive wolf made of wind. Woo-woo-oh-wwwwww. A strong magical force lingered in the wind flourishing around the wolf. Run away. Closing square bracket. Nox, devoid of any spirit resonance, still heard the wolf's voice clearly. Do not look back, run and report everything you have seen and experienced. Closing square bracket. You must survive. You need to live. Closing square bracket. Woo-woo, the wolf's howl spread through the rain, and for a moment, all the summoning circles conjured by Yenneker vanished. What in the world? Kuhuk. Within the powerful wind, Nox quickly regained his senses. Though the situation was incomprehensible, one thing was clear: he had been given a chance to survive. Knox hastily stood up, hoisting the unconscious Caddock over his shoulders, and sprinted through the North Forest. It all happened in an instant. What are you doing now, Merylda? Snap out of it, Yenneca. I understand your feelings as well. Closing square bracket. On the rainy precipice, Yenneca looked straight down at Merylda. And Merylda, in turn, whispered to Yenneca once more. Take a deep breath and think slowly, Yenneca. Closing square bracket. Merylda had read Ed Rothtailor's intentions completely. Realizing this, Yenneca's fading pupils shifted direction. Question mark quote. Upon seeing a new possibility, Yenneca quickly looked down the cliff. The end below the dizzying depths was not visible. Then, turning back to Merylda, she took a deep breath and urgently asked for help. Dulheim Hourglass Legendary. Restores the body to its state a few seconds earlier and eliminates all injuries and damage. Single use. The Dulheim Hourglass has been used and has reached the end of its lifespan. Destruction ruling. Your proficiency in legendary magical engineering items has increased with their use. Closing square bracket. Phew, Kuhuk, cough. Pushing through the waves, he barely managed to climb onto the rock at the base of the cliff. Lying against a nearby rock, spitting out the briny seawater with a gasp. Wow, Kuhuk. After coughing up seawater for a while, tranquility finally returned to his body. Phew, Hook, definitely going to catch a cold. Quote, even though the deadly curse was gone, the effect of the Dulheim Hourglass did not heal the wounds caused by the sword slash. The pain was significant as the saltwater infiltrated my wounds, the water I ingested compounded it, and my body temperature continued to drop as a result. My first priority, once I was capable of moving, would be to return to camp and seek basic medical attention. That, of course, depended on whether my body would cooperate and function properly. A bit reckless, I admit, but it all went fairly smoothly. Phew. I mumbled to myself. The Dulheim Hourglass was a legendary magical engineering artifact crafted over an entire vacation period. At the third act of the story, its existence was absurdly anachronistic, but it was a treasured creation that I had managed to complete after a series of grueling attempts. I hadn't anticipated using it so soon. It felt almost wasteful to think of all the effort dissolving so quickly. Nonetheless, its value lies in its use at the right place and time, so it's wise to use it when necessary. With enough materials and time, I could recreate this magical engineering artifact. It wouldn't be easy, but it was feasible. With this, Ed Rothtailor would be considered deceased for the foreseeable future. Krebin Rothtailor's causality confirmation magic was notoriously tricky. Once it was set on killing Ed Rothtailor, it would confirm that future, expending vast amounts of magical energy to find the causes leading up to that outcome. Therefore, to evade his scrutiny, it was necessary to die, at least once. Handling all of Krebin Rothtailor's assassination methods would be way too troublesome otherwise. No matter how crafty a political machination was, the dispatch of personal force within the Achen Island was prohibited by Academy regulations, so the internal affairs of the island remained largely unknowable. While not entirely impossible to circumvent, the news of my death would render such efforts unnecessary. Given the vast distance between the Rothtailor estate or royal palace and Achen Island, it would be difficult to receive timely news, even without the Academy regulations. Moreover, Krebin, being a prominent figure in the royal court, was too busy to focus solely on this matter. Caddock and Knox were likely dispatched to the Academy conjointly, under the pretense of temporarily assisting with Tanya's external affairs. This meant that once Tanya's crucial matters were settled, they would have to leave Achen Island. Perhaps, once the student council elections are over, and the treaty negotiations conclude. Both events were set to happen concurrently, so it would not take long, only a matter of days. If I could remain a deceased person until then, at least Krebin would not become aware of my living presence on the island. It wouldn't be sustainable for a lifetime, but it would suffice for a year or two, especially if Tanya's lips are sealed. In 1 or 2 years, the Rothtaylor family could very well be history. Nevertheless, I'm starting to feel a bit more movement in my body. I slowly steadied myself and tried to raise my upper body, feeling strength gradually return. Returning to the camp in this rain would be arduous, but it was a necessity. That's when I heard it. Whoosh! I found you. I could sense an intense heat, which seemed to emanate from right above me. Unbelievable. The sight of the gigantic fire lizard clinging to the cliff was magnificent. The girl who jumped down was undoubtedly Yenica. Her face, as she crossed the rocky area below the cliff, filled me with an unwarranted sense of relief. Wow, I was in such sore shape, on the verge of death even, and to think you found me like this. Grateful, I waved at Yenica with a cheerful expression. A friend who comes to help just in time, appearing precisely when needed, is indeed a reassuring presence. I had to start with explaining the situation. After contemplating where to begin, I was about to open my mouth when Yenica suddenly rushed towards me. Yenny, whoosh, squeeze. Yenica, now hugging my neck tightly, collapsed with her face buried in my shoulder without letting go. The sound of spring rain. Yenica, who was smothering me in her embrace, was uncharacteristically silent. Contemplating what to say, I ended up hugging Yenica's back in return. I always seem to cause you worry. I'm sorry, Yenica. Quote, her head, resting on my shoulder, appeared to shake slightly. She was probably unable to speak. Asterisk, crackling of firewood. Considering the wood was soaked, it burned surprisingly well, likely due to the power of spirit magic. To call it a cave would be generous. Seated with Yenica in a hollow below the cliffside, we went over the whole situation. So, Ed, it seems best for you to lay low until the election is over for your own benefit in the long run. Quote, that's right. I'd rather the Rothtaylor main house didn't know I'm alive. If I can persuade Tanya, I won't have to reveal my existence to them for as long as I'm at this school. Quote, laying low within Aiken Island could be more comfortable than being exposed, depending on the circumstance. That means, I'll need to hide out for a while. At least until Tanya's retinue leaves, when the student council elections are over. Quote, I'll bring you the essentials and other living supplies. Don't worry too much, Ed. Quote, thanks, I always appreciate it, Yenica. But, my wounds are starting to pain me again. The space near the fire was ample, but since being discovered lying below the cliff, Yenica kept a tight hold around my neck. I didn't want to embarrass her by saying anything unnecessary, but it was getting increasingly difficult to bear the pain. Yenica took a deep breath and released her grip before speaking. Sorry, holding you somehow makes me feel safer, Ed. Quote ellipsis quote. Quote ellipsis. Can you forget I said that please? Quote ellipsis quote. After hastily unlatching her arms, Yenica grasped her own knees and took deep breaths, her face flushing red. I caught my breath, pondering whether to speak up, but the pain became relentless, and I decided to focus on tending to my body first. Then I quietly watched the rainfall outside the cave. It seemed the spring rain would continue for a while longer, but unlike a winter blizzard or summer monsoon, it wasn't expected to persist too long. So much left to do. For now, I decided to wait for the rain to stop. If you want to have more videos like this, then like and subscribe to my channel, and have a nice day or evening or night. I will see you soon.